Hi, Bill.
Wayne, how are
you? Can you tell me what the 6-digit password is?
For the meeting?
Yes, because it comes through with all the things. So I'm on my cell phone because it doesn't come out as a number when I get the invitation.
Yeah. When you accepted it, it should populate your calendar. And if you double click that, it should show it.
No, but I'm on my cell phone and I want to be on my home computer.
It's 21613 is the passcode, but meeting ID, you need that too?
It's got to be a 6-digit number.
Okay, that's the passcode, 216613.
216
613.
613. Okay. 216. Okay, now I'm on my computer. So can you let me in there?
Oh, yeah.
Good. See. Oh, I got to hang this up. Hang that up. All right. Well,
yeah, I think if you remove it, yeah, there we go. That's it. Now we don't get that feedback.
Yeah, it's because they're two microphones too close together.
Yeah.
That's what I've been told.
All right, we're all here.
Okay. Now I want to be on video. All right. Now, my question is, when anybody sends out an invitation and it has the encrypting, I'm going to call it encrypted, but it says, J13617, that whole password. Okay. Two things happen. When I get an invitation, I don't know when the meeting is going to be. It doesn't come through as this is a meeting for 2 o'clock on Tuesday or the date. It only says you've been invited to a Zoom meeting and here's your access code and here's the password. And so and none of them are the same numbers. And so how do you sort through that? I've been just pulling my hair out.
I think there's an option, Wayne, when you get an invite from that to add to your calendar.
It adds it to the calendar, but it doesn't tell me what the meeting, it adds it to my calendar, but it doesn't let me.
Does it add it like that? Do you see that? Like budget capital meeting, and then it gives the whole thing. When you're looking at your calendar and it shows it in your calendar, if you go on it and double click it, it should open up another window.
Yeah, if I do that, that's fine. Here I am, I'm in my car and I want to go to this, or I want to log into a different computer. I don't have that. In other words, it doesn't, you put down capital meeting and stuff, and I'm sorry to interrupt like this, but I get so frustrated because I get to the computer and up top, it tells me what the number is, but it gives me that long thing. Now, you're right. If I guess the problem is I'm not using the same computer all the time. So I don't have the ability to get to the mail, but I got the ability. If I don't have mail on a computer and I don't have my cell phone here or it's dead, I can't get on. I can go to Zoom, but I can't put in the password because I don't know what it is because it's that long convoluted number.
But you have the meeting ID number, just not the password?
Yes.
Yeah. Again, without knowing what you're looking at,
yeah,
you should, if you have the meeting ID number, the passcode should be right underneath it.
No, but the passcode shows up as a 45 character or 55 character thing where it's uppercase, lowercase, 1, 2, 3. And to do that and put that number in and then have it be right.
Oh, that's the ID number. So if you looking at the ID number, it starts with HTTPS. Is that the one you're talking about?
No, I'm talking about where it says PWD equals capital N, capital G, 1, R.
Okay, yeah, you don't need any of that.
What?
You just need the numbers right before that. So the numbers right before that is the meeting ID number.
No, the numbers before it are like 835-232-04590.
That's the meeting ID number.
But then I go to that and it says, put the password in.
Right.
Yeah, Lisa, you're gonna, I think, just have to work with Wayne to show him how to do it.
Yeah,
I don't know if we're gonna be able to get that right now.
We're not gonna worry about it right now.
You know what, Wayne? I'll make it a point to send you the agenda every time because the agenda has it all.
Yeah, and it's only for certain times. It's like, you know, I guess my frustration is when someone sends me one that says, here's your invite, and it doesn't tell me what day it is, or, you know, I can press, like you said, I can put it in my calendar and then it'll go somewhere. But anyway, sorry. Just had a busy morning here. Thank you very much, Dawn, though. All right.
All right, so why don't we call the meeting to order at 2:10. Presidents Bill, Lisa, Dawn, and Wayne. And our discussion today is to go over the budget, and particularly the sheets, Dawn, that you sent to us last week. So I'll let you have the floor. One thought I had to complete this is on the capital stuff is to get Rob and Scott from Wood and Curran to come to our next general meeting and give us, and I can send them, or Lisa, you could send to Scott, okay, what are your 10 priorities for the next coming fiscal year as far as what we need to do to the plant? Because in the package that he sent, and I think you got a copy of it, it had this colored sheet here. I don't know if you can see it. No, you can't.
No.
That shows horizontally like all the different things that are going on in the plant.
Yeah.
And I think
Lisa sent that to me.
Yeah,
it's numbered.
Yeah. So I think if he gave us, say, what we need to do in the forthcoming fiscal year, we certainly can use that as sort of our, you know, a lot of the expense stuff that we're looking at, the capital that we're going to require, and then so we have an idea of what that is, and then. So do you
think? Sorry to interrupt, but so do you think? Based on that document they sent, and it was numbered, and they sent Rob on December 29th sent a letter kind of identifying numbers 1 through 8 as the items needed.
Yep.
Are you saying there's items in addition to that for next year?
So some of the stuff that he's talking about right now, he's already started and is doing.
Okay.
Right.
Yes. All right. So I need clarity because I went to Lisa and I was like, I don't understand. It's like Groundhog's Day. Every time we talk, I know I've already said we have money for all of these except for
that's what
the rotary sludge thickener.
Correct. That's what he's confirming that he's doing right now. He's actually ordered, the SCADA is basically installed, ready to go.
Okay.
So, and things like the blower pumps and silencers, they're on order. So yeah, we've got all that stuff going. I'm thinking about for the next 6 months, what is he thinking for the plant? That's all.
Yeah, no, I agree. Because if it's more than just a sludge thickener, we kind of have to know that because that's 200,000, and we got to figure out, you know, if that's a high priority thing that we need to do, I have to figure out how we're going to pay for that.
Yeah. So, and again, I'm thinking we're starting this off the end of June, okay, of 21. So this is our capital budget to this point. Those items that are on the front of the page, and then what I want him to do is give us an idea, prioritize from the end of June, you know, 1st of July. Now, what do we need to do? That kind of stuff.
Right. And I'm assuming sludge thickener because of the price tag, and I'm assuming because it's already on this list as something that has not started, but is a number 1 priority.
Yeah,
I would think would be a priority for next year. So it's got to be that 200 plus anything else he sees.
Yep.
So we already know there's 200 that we have to kind of work into our program here.
Yeah. Now the good news is they are working without it. So, you know, they're doing some stuff. It's not optimal, but at some point in time, if it dies, we're gonna have an issue. So.
Right.
So.
Now on the December 22nd, 2020 letter where they went over the CPI index and stuff, did we take care of that in terms of what we thought the increase is going to be just going forward?
Yeah, it's on the second page. He's got the contract with the the CPI is 0.6%, and he's actually got it spelled out every month by year,
right?
And it includes this year right now. So
right. So we're going to have that number that we can put in terms of our cost.
Yes. Yeah.
That we have to include in our revenues. To be
right now that number is exclusive of the 80 grand. So that 610 grand or whatever it is you need to add 80 for the full contract value, because it does not include recurring and routine non-routine of 80 grand that's built into our contract. So basically based on calendar year, I estimated 690, which I think is pretty close to what he gave us plus the 80. So I'm sorry, Bill, I don't have the email right in front of me. What was their projection with the CPI increase for this next calendar year? What was that base number?
It looks to be 610,270 if it's year 3 of the contract, right, with an increase.
So 610, all right, yeah. So 610,270
at 0.6%.
Yeah, CPI. Yeah.
So really, the full contract value is 690,270 with that routine, non-routine. In the Excel budget document I sent you guys, I plugged 715,000 as a little cushion, because we know that in any given year, that routine, non-routine can go over the 80, and we're on the hook for that extra amount in that given fiscal year.
That's a good thought. Good thought.
I figured at least having 20 with us gives us about 20 or 25,000 cushion, just in case something happens during the year, and that will hopefully cover us. But I guess if you want me to start from the top down, I can just kind of explain the rationale of where the numbers are coming from at this point.
Sure.
And then we'll just have to, I think the biggest part is there's 2 items, which I'll get to in a minute. But
isn't 0.6% of the 610,000? That's not a very big number.
No, it's small.
It was like $3,600 or something.
Yeah, at least.
So my question was, where does the 690 coming from then? What's the 80,000 itself?
That's the recurring, non-recurring number that they budgeted into the contract for things we ask them to do that aren't part of the actual operating expense.
Just a set amount each year that you're putting in 80,000 each year.
Yeah, like fix this or do that or whatever it is. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. That's part of the overall monthly payment that we pay. So it's this base amount. So year 3 is essentially what we're in now, and will be most of next fiscal year.
Right.
So that's the base 610. Then there's 80 of the routine, non-routine.
Okay.
So question, Don. So say out of that 80, we only spent 58,000. Do they give us a credit towards the new year?
I believe they give us a credit at the end of the year. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. I thought so, because they had talked about that once before, that they put that into one of our something that we were about to buy. They said, no, you had like an X $1,000 credit. So
yeah, and they should, at least for the last few years. I think we actually had to pay a little more because they went over, but they give us a whole breakdown of all the costs and stuff like that. So if there is a credit, it will be documented and we'll be able to know what that is.
Okay. All right. So go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. So, for sewer, for the user charges, and unfortunately, I don't remember the exact calculation that God, I'm already blanking on his name.
Ryan?
Who was the commission member that just left?
Oh, John Beck.
John Beck.
John, oh my God.
Okay.
So I don't remember the exact rationale. I know we increased the quarterly fee slightly, but I calculated about $1.4 million, and this is very conservative. So I think we have a little room, but on the next tab, the sewer use estimates, I looked at the last 3 years, fiscal 20, 19, and 18. And just for preliminary review purposes, I picked the smallest year based on usage. So in a fiscal 20, it was 12.3 million cubic foot of flow, if that's how you say it. And then I went through the process of calculating that divided by the 100 times 9.51 per 100 cubic feet. And then based on the number of accounts per our last commitment, estimated the quarterly fee. And I came up with 1.445 as an estimate. Now, it's not the most scientific by any means. If you took a 3-year average, instead of 12.3, it would be 12.6. And that would be millions of usage. But that only increases the estimated user charge of maybe of 30 grand. So either way, I think the budget should be a little bit more conservative if we're using current rates. So let me step back for a second. So right now, based on what I sent you, we have an estimate of 1.445. Current rates as is. I think this is going to have to change because as we go through, we're already at a deficit of 200 grand before looking at capital. So this is an area we're going to have to look at. And I think, from your general consensus, get an idea what you're comfortable with. From my understanding last year, the quarterly fee is something that the commissioners are allowed to increase as a board vote, but a usage rate increase needs to go to town meeting.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. There were a number of people that said that we don't have to go to town meeting for either one. But we'd have
to look at the bylaws because either way, I want to make sure this is done right so that everybody, we're all covered.
Right.
Oh yeah.
But now for the quarterly charge, we get the least amount of money from that. And
271,000
right.
is what I estimate. So it's minimal. And I think that's why John hit that last year was to try to, it's not a significant number. It was something that based on his calculations, the budget number got us the balance. And again, without knowing what the flow he used, I don't know how he got the 1.5. I deemed it to be reasonable based on what we had budgeted in prior years, but without knowing that, I can't really compare my calculation to his.
So you're looking at the 1.519.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't have that calculation in any of my records. I know John had it at one point. I don't know if he shared it with Lisa, but I did not get a copy of kind of how that calculation panned out.
Yeah, because I was looking at it a little bit different way. I was looking at the delta between, say, actual 18 and 19, which was 0.031 plus going from 18 to 19, and the delta between 19 and 20, which was actually a reduction by 0.03%. If you look at the usage fees, and the other, and I don't have my scratch sheet in front of me here, but you're looking at more than that with a delta between 1.423 and 1.519. So
I mean that's a $74,000 decrease in our estimate based on the current use. Yeah, and this is where I'm going to need your input to see where we're comfortable. This is not really what I review this normally, not put it together for you guys. So I'm going to need a little, I don't know what trends look like in the sewer industry or water industry, really. I have to rely on the engineers to really give me that better idea. Now, water, I think they were a little conservative and they just went with last year's usage to be consistent because 21, we can't use that. A lot more people were at home. All the bills have spiked because of people being at home in higher use. So I don't think that is a reasonable use for calculation.
So
that's why I was looking.
Well, let me just say one thing on that. Everything that I'm hearing, and I'm sort of in the health side, and I'm not in the health sciences, but I'm in the healthcare world, is that this ain't going away before probably the middle of October, November, and so I was sort of thinking what you just said about the water department. I think our usage is going to be very close to what it was in the calendar year 2020.
Calendar year 2020.
Because look at it, we're going to have people at home through the summer. Then everybody will be coming home because all the schools and what have you will be shut. So I wouldn't want to go down. I wouldn't want to cut it so that, you know, we're going back and saying, oh, geez, you know, what COVID's killing us. You know, we've got too many people in their homes and they're using too much water and too much toilets and everything else. I don't know, Wayne. What do you think? I mean, what do you think, Wayne?
Well, I think that there are going to be some events that are absolutely going to happen. I think we're going to end up, in all likelihood, with having one or two projects go online that are going to give us $50,000 to $100,000 in usage revenue. That will, in all likelihood, come around the July timeframe, somewhere in there. And I think I agree that people are going to spend more time at home, but it's going to be forever that there are going to be people working from home now versus going back to offices and stuff.
Yeah.
The second thing that's going to happen is we're going to be getting some extra revenue through connections that I think are going to continue. We did a couple of $100,000, I think, this past year, right? And I'm seeing that that certainly for the next 12 months, our revenue is going to be up. And Dawn, I think you're saying, well, do you do this because of what are outside the normal realm, meaning permit fees cannot be really projected because you can't tell the timing of something or the size of something, you know, the number of EDUs or fractional EDUs or whatever people are paying in that way. And then how are new connections going to relate to flows? I think in the past we were having flows that did not go through the sewer treatment plant, but we got the money for it because people didn't have a second meter and deduct that usage for their swimming pool, their lawn, or anything like that. And unfortunately, the water department is getting more fees from reading the meters, and we're not getting any of it, but we are losing the flows coming in that we can bill for. So I guess those are like three different things that are happening: the unpredictability of the fees, the unpredictability of new accounts or flows, and then new opportunities that are coming in. The second part of this is that there are I think there has to be a fairness in charging people for having the ability to use the sewer, and then that different rate of how much you're going to use for the usage, meaning that it's likely that we should charge more for the connection, even though we're collecting a couple $100,000. Maybe we get another 50,000 or something and increase that fee. Or do we put something on the usage thing? And because when you start talking 12 million of something, you know, 50 cents or something like that adds up to a lot of money,
right?
Or 3 cents.
Right.
So, and I just
go ahead, and I'll finish. I could just throw something.
My last thing is, it's like there's just like it's very difficult to project. And then the 200,000, is it going to be spent in that amount at that time? And do we have to get it all in 1 year? Or do we say, all right, let's budget $100,000 instead of 200,000, and it's going to go to the next year, and there are things that are going to happen, and we'll sort of sort it out.
I like the conservative approach.
Okay.
So I don't know what that is. Honestly, there were a few things being thrown out there. I don't know where the 200 grand came from. I heard connection fees. I want to leave that alone. So right now I want to talk about usage, because that's going to confuse me, because I have my own opinion on connections where I think we should be very limited on that. I did not fight with John as much last year about the amount he put in, even though we connected a lot this year and we have a huge surplus. I thought 80 grand was a bit too much because we don't know when things are going to connect. So that being said, I think 80 grand, I think, is more than enough for now.
Yeah, I'd go. Yeah, I'd say that. Yeah,
I would go.
So
And-
then with your point about, usage, I don't know if that's where you meant adding something would get us another 200,000.
I was thinking
that's kind of
raising.
So aside from those connections, I think the usage, I'll be good with whatever you guys come up that's realistic, I guess. We don't know exactly what's going to happen. And to your point, Wayne, you're right. Most likely there's going to be a lot of people now, based on what we just went through, that aren't going to be returning to an office and are going to be home now instead. So yeah, maybe that's something that we factor in somehow into the flow calculation. I just want to make sure whatever we put through for the budget number, we just have a good documentation of how we got that. So whether we looked at calendar year 2020 plus a percentage bump, because we think there's going to be a big, continued usage, great. I just want to make sure that we have something documented on how we came to the amount we're going to budget for user charge.
So to that point, one of the two things I want, just surface, and I think everyone understands them, but under expenditures, we're getting rid of all the grinder pump maintenance and retrofits because of the easements, right? And the second thing is, so what about the fees that we're getting from grinder pump maintenance? That's going to go away.
I already zeroed that out. If you look at the schedule, I zeroed out the revenue and expense to grinder pump. So you'll see last year for 21, we budgeted 48.5.
Yep.
For revenue and offsetting expense, I zeroed both those line items out for 2022.
Fine. Okay. Go ahead.
So I just found, I think it was John's document from last year, his working document. And under usage charges, he has, it's assumed 5% decline in billings and 3% increase in rates.
And
does that help in determining how we came out with that figure?
Maybe.
From FY 2020 of 1.522528 to FY 2021 1.492077.
1.4. Well, we budgeted one. You said you have the 1519 number? Because that's what was budgeted for user charges.
Yeah.
So if you can just forward that to the group, and we could just take a look at it. For now, I think it is what we have to look forward to where we're at now. We know the quarterly fee is $43. Annualized, that piece is easy. That's just pure math.
Right.
The more difficult, the more subject to different viewpoint or just calculation is the usage. And so I think that's just going to be the little bit of not a sticking point, but just something where we have to put our heads together to figure out where we're comfortable and what are we really foreseeing next year. And we got to remember it's July 1 through June 30th of next year that we're looking for.
Right. Yeah, I'm almost, because if you're looking, and even John's talking about 3% increases, if you're looking at that going back, that's basically what we're seeing. And I would be comfortable with going something that had not off of the 1519, but maybe off of, take the highest of those past 3 years, the 1467, adding 3% to that and having that as the budget.
Yeah,
because that way,
they want to come up with the calculation though. What John mentioned, but there was a 3%. I think he actually we changed the fee amount.
Yeah, we did have an increase, I think, in 19, I believe.
We'll have to look at the bill, Lisa, to see if I could have sworn he had a vote, or that he went and we actually changed the quarterly fee amount.
Right, but that, as you said, that's kind of a little consequence, right, in the big game.
I'm grabbed a couple of bills.
No, I agree. It's little. I still want to be able to go when.
Yeah,
when
yeah,
we go,
no, I know. You got to.
We tell. I want to know. We use based on this. This calculation is how we got there.
Right.
As great as percentages are, I just want to be a little tighter because we've just been so tight, I feel, in the sewer budget over the last few years that I just want to make sure that we're being conservative, and that we all understand how we're getting to these numbers.
Okay, so if I won't say, for lack of a better word, I'll say if you don't like, but if you think that the 1519 is too high, what number, based on the numbers where we have and what our present usage is, where do you think we should be?
Again, I don't know.
I know, it's a guess. You know, we're all sort of guessing because things could change.
Right. So I guess that's my point, is that I think we just need to be comfortable at a scenario that we're all comfortable with. So as we said, quarterly fee is basically set. It's $43 per quarter. We have about 1,600 accounts. We know that. But then we just got to come up with
well, I mean, if you look at it this way, is it if the period from July 1 through December was 709,096, right?
Yeah. Oh no, that's through November. So if we pull up the December report,
I don't know if I have that.
Lisa should have.
Yeah, Lisa, do you have the number?
Everybody should have it. I sent that to everybody.
You know what? I probably didn't print it. So.
The sewer revenue through December for usage was about 860,000.
Okay, so what if we did this? What if we did?
But again, that's based on 2 large quarters, 2 big increases, significant increases in usage for those first 2 quarters.
Mm-hmm. Right, but those usage didn't go down too much, did it? I mean, let me just see here.
Usage is up.
Yeah.
Again, because it follows the water flow. Again, I just think it's if we think this is going to continue, we're going to have higher than normal use, then a larger number should be somewhat reasonable. But again, when you look at 18, 19, and 20 for actual total usage revenue, we're at 1.4, 1.47, 1.42. Now we're budgeting 1.5 in 21. I mean, I'm just trying to do his best here, be conservative, but come up with the number that makes sense. And honestly, I don't have any tricks or
no
thoughts. That's where I'm looking to you guys to see what your thoughts are on how best to calculate this to come up with the number. And if it's lower or higher than what we budgeted in FY21, so be it, as long as we all agree that it makes sense and is conservative.
Well, if you look at, like, I'm just looking at, the second quarter of fiscal year 21.
Yep.
It's almost $1 million. I mean, excuse me, it's almost $100,000 over, right? Over the previous, and it's been, as you said, it's just been increasing. Shit.
Right. Yeah. I mean, through the second quarter, through 6 months, we're up $100,000 over last year. Yep. And now, but again, could keep in mind that's attributable to increased flow. And so if we think we're going to continue to see this type of flow for the next, now we're going to have to factor that instead of 4 quarters, 6 quarters, right? Because we got to make sure that gets us through the whole fiscal year next year if we're going to count on the increased flow based on where we are now in the current situation with everybody being home and more water being used and so forth.
Yeah. So what I was getting back is if we took the last month, which was 860, and doubled it through the last month at 860, would be at 1,720,000, which I think is high because that's a very high jump, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's see here. But I also think that the way we're going here, we're going to be we might be under budget with the 1.5. That's what I'm looking at. So if we look at the first cores out there.
So is there any, I mean, I don't know if we're all going to get to the same spot. Is it worth, you guys looking at it, thinking about this a little bit more instead of right this second and then coming back?
Yeah.
We get a kind of general consensus of what we're thinking for an estimate. I just think it would be good to kind of go through the rest of this so we know where we're at now.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
And then kind of what we're going to need to get to A, balance the budget, but then B, then we're going to have to factor in how we're going to pay for capital as well.
Correct.
So that may, in addition to what we're thinking for flows, if we did have to increase the rate, not saying that we have to, at least we'll know based on the rest of the forecasted budget here.
Mm-hmm.
So on the revenue side, I kept everything pretty consistent. Penalties and interest at 8,000. We're a little bit behind that number now, but 8,000 is okay. 80,000 for connection. We just agreed that, this is kind of not a volatile number, but a number that from year to year is going to vary based on actual connections and when they occur.
Yeah, and I would sort of leave that the same way. I wouldn't.
Perfect.
My opinion.
Yep. And then sewer permit and licenses is permit connection fee or sewer permit fee that we get. Seems like historically we've done better than $3,000, but again, to be conservative, I think 3,000 is okay. The next number, the sewer betterment added to taxes, that's essentially is what it is. That's what we're expecting to bill for our Little Harbor betterments next year. So that comes right from our utility billing system.
Right.
That number's good. And then 1,500, we allocate a small amount for interest, which we do better than that. But again, being conservative, I'd like to keep it there. And then the final piece, and again, there's not much revenue, various line items for our revenues. It's the transfer from sewer betterment stabilization, essentially an amortization of the fund that we have to help us pay that betterment debt year after year.
Yep.
So again, based on the very basic calculation I did of user charges and all these other revenues, we're just about 2.3 million. Now going at the expense side, clerical assistance, I did just update the little worksheet. I think 30 grand is basically right on target with what the direct charges for Lisa and some of the indirects related to Medicare is. So I think 30 is a good number. And rentals, $700. We're pretty much in line with that year over year. Legal services.
So the rental, that's something that's getting charged to everybody from the, what is it? It's not Habitat for Humanity or something like that?
I believe that's the case. Lisa could chime in on that one.
Yeah, I believe it is.
Okay, so one of the things that I have, just as we're going down the list on, is one of the things that I have is that with regards to legal services and then also for consulting engineer, a good portion of legal services, I would think, and a good portion, well, not a good portion, but a portion of the consulting engineering costs are related directly to the Chief Justice Cushing Highway application. And in the contract, he's paying for all those fees. So at some point, Lisa, we should get an idea of, to date, what is Ron charged us for work specifically with CJC as well as Dan.
Rod.
I think his bill is now going sort of way up because we have him come to almost every meeting for a 5-minute discussion.
Right. That was for the easement mostly. So we don't really need him right now anymore.
But we spent more than 10,000 for the easement so far.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just going up. So that should drop off, you know. And so, but we're going to end up with a deficit by the end of the year, you know, from the original.
Yep. Okay.
Right, and you know, we'll watch that from now to the end of the year, and if we have other accounts that offset it, you know, we're good. But if we have to go to town meeting just to get a little extra money because of that, it's okay. We know as long as that is in the agreement that they pay for these, we'll get the money back later. So, if do you think so? With that being said, and then once we get through CJC, you agree that 10,000 and 80 respectively for legal and consulting is still reasonable?
Well, we think that 80 is what sort of the consulting is for the whole year, regardless. I mean, there's, he's working, he almost spends the $80,000 on redoing stuff that has to be redone. For instance, you do I&I, and we're paying him a certain amount of money to do the, you know, to do the camera work, something like that. And then again, 3 years later, you got to do it again because of something that can happen in the meantime, right? Someone's digging, you know, certain things that, any maintenance like that, a lot of it is just sudden and unpredictable, and then has an amount of money that you just have to spend whatever it is to fix it because you're pumping thousands of gallons out out of the manhole or something, and somehow it has to be absorbed, but you can't plan on it, right? It's sort of like snow removal. You have to pay for it, but you can't plan for it. So but what's going to happen with the consulting engineer is he's now been directed to work on a set of plans for South Main Street by, you know, the higher ups. And that section, we're getting estimates for it now, is money that we're going to be spending out sort of from our budget, but it's going to have to be reimbursed from either, apparently what they do is you're going to put that in a separate account category. And then when the project gets done, you basically finance what you've already spent so that it's paid for by either the users or the town or all sewer users or something, and pay it back, right?
Well, and I think this was brought up last time. I'm not really sure what Dan is meaning by that. That is true when you have a specific project that is large and you're moving forward. This is not.
I think that's what's going to happen though on this project.
So it's going to be a multi-million-dollar project. We'll retain an engineer. All of that will go into a capital project fund when that project is approved. If we're just doing some engineering costs now, I mean, that I don't see that getting reimbursed to the sewer fund. I guess I got to understand the project and what he's actually doing, and I just want to make sure that he is telling you the right information, because that doesn't sound right to me.
I think there may be a need, and it certainly may come up before our annual town meeting, of a decision being, we want to take it beyond the preliminary stages, and we want to get into working drawings, or we need the information so that we can go out to bid and get an actual number of what it's going to cost or whatever. I think that, and this isn't coming from, I think, Bill or I as sewer commissioners. I think it's coming from the selectmen and the town manager and the DPW person, that this is something that we believe the town needs, and we want to finish our part of cleaning up the Gulf River, and we should go and say yes to going from here to North Situate.
Yeah, and Don,
out to 3A, not anything else, and treat it with our own plant, and sort of fill in that so that everything in Cohasset that's on that pond is being, for direct discharge going into it, is going to be satisfied. Now, okay, that isn't going to happen. And by the way, Don, I think, and I might have mentioned this before, but some of the reasons that they want to push this ahead is because they want to repave and make South Main Street all back to the way it should be. But I think that what we're going to spend to try to accelerate that during these times, and then our bargaining with the state or anything else might be diminished, because we're going to do something and have it all done before we were told to do it. And unless And a smaller group of people are going to pay more money than the people that, meaning if the town doesn't subsidize South Main Street, I'm not sure the residents of South Main Street can afford the amount it's going to take to do that section in today's dollars. You know, it might be that it's $75,000 per household. And at some point that's going to be rejected by, wait a minute, we're, you know, the residents aren't going to pay for it. The rest of the sewer users don't want to pay for it because they've already paid 100% for Little Harbor connections. You know, they paid for the whole $12 million, $13 million themselves, those 450 people.
Yeah.
And Beechwood people aren't going to want to pay for it because they're not going to see sewer. Who's going to pay for it? But
if it goes through and if it's only helping them, I would think it would be a betterment project. But yeah, I haven't even been involved in any discussions except for now and maybe one prior meeting when you brought this up. But I don't know how that's going to pan out. But if we're going through that and we're doing a specific project, I would think it would be authorized by a group that knows where the funding is coming from. So how do I say this? I don't know what Dan is working on, what the scope of his project is, but right now I know of no capital project that we have no funding for, no nothing. If this is just more exploratory work for the sewer department, that's going to come out of the budget. I don't think that's going to be recouped.
Right,
but that's going forward. If we went through and did this North Situate and we did what you were just talking about, engineering costs would be part of the capital budget in addition to construction costs. That would get bundled as a big project expense and most likely bonded. Now, who pays for that bond depends on how it gets approved. If it's fully, now you just mentioned it could be 75 grand a household. Maybe it doesn't pass, but if it did pass, then that would be a betterment to all those folks. And then if somehow the town contributed, then somehow it would be split between that. But I guess I just want to make sure that we were on the same page that whatever Dan's doing now, there is no authorized special project account or anything like that. There's no town meeting approval yet for funding. So whatever the scope of his work, I hope isn't extensive where I'm not aware of a funding source for it. And if it's just, a little more exploratory work from the sewer department, great. It'll come out of the 80. And then if it gets to this bigger point that he is hired as a consultant on this larger project, then yeah, I would think that would go to a capital project account and we can move.
Now they are thinking this group of three towns here about they haven't spent apparently the $100,000 that each of them put together. Make sure I stay on here. They haven't spent all of the money that they raised, but the next step would be, and I think the selectmen may make a decision in the next couple of weeks about whether or not we want to take the next step with the regional thing and spend the money for a comprehensive study of the whole town and our plant to see where it's sort of going, what's going to happen. Because obviously you heard that there are different groups that want different things. Someone wants to sewer it because of economic development. Someone else says, no, we want to help Situate so that they can clean up the same property that we're cleaning up this side, that they'll clean up the other side. And I'm assuming that the town manager is probably going to have an article that the town as a whole is going to pay to study the town as a whole.
That's what I would assume. Sorry to just try to get us back on track here, but so Dan, aside from whatever he's doing right now, it's 80 grand. But we've been in line with the 80,000 for years.
Yeah,
it looks like that's been a good number. Mm-hmm. And from what my understanding is that he's now only going to be working on project with scope, not just stuff that he thinks needs to be done.
Right.
We should have a good handle on what we're actually going to be getting billed for from.
Well, even more important, because we're going to be approving all of these projects, other than say a $1,000 retainer or what have you. When we start getting to a magic number, if that's 80, then we'll tell him, okay, shut it off until the following fiscal year.
I think we'll get to that. I think we will make it stretch to the thing if it got that high, or someone else has to contribute, right?
Yeah, and then just very quickly, Don, going back to the whole South Main Street thing. Yeah, we probably, Lisa, at our next meeting should have a chat with Brian so he can reiterate where this money was coming from, because it was coming from, my understanding was coming from the same place where they got the money for the regional study that Wayne just mentioned. Now, what that is or where it's coming from, I have no idea.
But they hired Dan to do this work?
We did. We were asked to go do a study, like a preliminary plan of study.
Okay.
Basically what it was. And all he's
yeah,
got
we need to get on the same page with that, because I just don't, my fear is all of a sudden I'm going to be getting invoices and, I'm going to be getting the questions on where to pay it from. And if I don't have the insight, again, this is why I'm saying it. I was a little thrown off that Dan's even doing any of this. I didn't know he was hired for that regional piece. So yeah, if we could
he's
get
not.
Brian.
No, he's not. He's hired for us to do a study of just 3A. So for maybe a mile. Okay. So he's not hired to do North Situate or any of the other areas. Okay. That's not the case. We're actually just looking at it. And rather than us all getting twisted up here, we should let him tell us what exactly he's doing. And then, quite frankly, if we don't have the funding to do it, we'll stop it. I mean, there's no issue, no problem here. Dan, stop. Don't do any more unless you want to volunteer your work.
Okay, that works. And I just want to make sure we're all good, because this just happens quite too often. Everything is good. We're moving things along, and then all of a sudden, hey, Don, what account? Where do we pay this? And if I don't know, if I'm not informed,
I get it.
So who's asking? Who's asking?
Who?
Who's asking Dan?
No, he sent us something. We can look at what he sent us, and then we can also talk to him next Tuesday.
And Brian Joyce, if the town has asked for this work, then we should just all be on the same page.
Yep.
So anyway,
what Dan did was to basically give a summary of everything that he's been doing and what it's cost and stuff like that. Because we absolutely put our foot down and said, this is we don't know what you're doing and what you're billing us for when and if you end up billing us. And we certainly needed to predict what has he done that he hasn't billed us for, and who authorized it to be done, and what were the results of what he was supposed to do. And so these little things all over, like you mentioned a minute ago, Don, that, it's almost like, well, I got some time this week. I think I'll work on this. And then he does half of it. We never even know that he worked on it for half of it. And then, and then we get 6 bills that don't have any substance to them. And they say 17 hours at $170 an hour, X number of dollars, here it is. And we're trying to say, wait a minute, what?
Right. It's hard to reconcile that.
And he tells us, oh, that was something I did 6 months ago and I just didn't get to billing it yet.
What a way to run a business.
Bill when they need money.
Yeah.
So
anyway, if I can get back to the spreadsheet, we can just finish up.
Yeah, let's finish it up and go.
These items, contract services. That's what the water department charges for doing the bills and everything else. Yeah. I put in a number that they increased 2.5%. I just put it in there because I know they're going to do it. They're going to send it to you.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you a question. Because we go through this bovine scatology every year.
I know.
I can't even.
Since they have automated and they're just driving around for like an hour, and the thing goes up all the time. What we're doing is subsidizing their budget, right?
100%.
That's how you want to look at it. I'm not going to honestly get into this again for another fiscal year. We've talked about it. I sent my memo last time.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a jerk about it, but it's not. They're sharing. It's a cost that they're taking on. They're charging part of it back because that's how you get sewer bills. That's how you get your revenue. And I get it, but you want to fight with them, you can. I can't go through that anymore.
It's
I've
money
dealt
going
with it for
back.
an insignificant amount. It's just tough to keep going back and forth.
Yeah.
The next one, treatment plant maintenance repairs major. Now, we've had this in here for a bit. I don't know, actually. We got to take a look to see what exactly this is now, because I feel like this was an account we had budgeted and used before Woodard came on and had their 80,000 routine, non-routine. So this may be a line item that we're carrying right now that we don't need.
This was something I think we added after they showed up, so that exactly that. So if that number was supposed to be built, buried in, or not buried, but included within the service contract.
Okay, so I think we can, that makes sense then. So I think we could probably get rid of that one.
Well, I mean, look, you got, what is it? 219, something like that. Is that right? So
30,
far?
What are we at? 30,000, right? Is the one you...
The budget's 30. As of November, we spent $624.
Yeah. See, I mean, I think that should just go, because that stuff should be part of their unforeseen circumstances, if that's the right contractor.
Okay.
I'd just get rid of it.
So remove from sheet. Now we're going to get rid of that. We'll talk in a second. So service contract 715, I think we're good. Again, I explained that was a 690 of their contract, plus a little cushion for any overages. The next line, the North Hull, 75,000. Based on past history, it looks okay. Now, Lisa did mention that, I think Lisa mentioned that their rates may have increased. So this may be something that we might want to change a little bit, but again, I mean, looking at the history, in 20, we spent 126, but that's only because of the flow diversion.
Yeah.
So that's kind of an anomaly. When you look at the years prior, we're at 45, 52. So unless the rates increase drastically, 75 grand may be good for us.
So their increases, I think, the last time I spoke to Michelle about this was, I think one of them was going to be, one was passed was 10%. I think the next one is going to be something like 14%, is my recollection.
Yeah. 15.
Wow.
Yeah, or 15.
But the volume that we're doing has been pretty damn low.
Right, but we should probably add something to that number to plan for any kind of a fee increase.
Yeah.
Latest bill I have is 18,473. That's
the most recent bill.
That's the recent bill. Hasn't been paid yet.
Right, but that's 1 quarter, right?
1 quarter.
Right, but what happened was last year we had the diversion there that was billed for what $30,000-$40,000.
Yeah, that's what threw us off. We had 2 flow diversions. One, we recouped the $34,000 amount was recouped with CARES money, but the first flow diversion from the initial failure of the membrane was what we had to go to town meeting for to get a little bit more funding.
Yep.
So again, that one was an anomaly.
So the 18,000 times 4, call it 20,000, is, well, it's right in the $75,000.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe we do want to throw a 10% increase just to save ourselves.
I would. Yeah.
So make it 82.5.
Yeah, something like that, or make it 85, just to.
Yeah, I'll do that. 85,000.
And that way, then we can, if it's under, fine. But
hey, I like to be conservative, so you got my vote.
But 85.
Increase for change in rate. Now the next one, utilities.
Before you go on to facilities, back to Habitat for Humanity, 700. That should actually be 876.
All right, so I'll put it in for $900. I'll round up.
All right.
Okay.
900. That's Habitat. Okay. So utilities is something Lisa is still kind of taking a look at.
Yeah.
Based on the last 12 months of invoices, I think she found that the biggest user with the plant, we spent about $230,000 just on that one location. Then we have electrical costs for, I think, the pump stations, and then we have gas, which I know Lisa's working on. So I'm thinking that utilities is probably going to be closer to like 275, if not more. So that 30,000 that we're saving from removing that major repair, maybe I just put that into the utilities line for now, bump that up to 280,000. And then as Lisa takes a little bit deeper look into gas and some of the other electric, before we finalize this for, selectmen review and going through town meeting, we can make an adjustment if necessary. But I think 280 might be okay for now. What do you think, Lisa?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I agree. I saw the last electric bill and it was like $17,000 for the month.
Yeah.
I know.
That's just the wastewater treatment plant.
Yeah, it's nuts, absolutely nuts. Anyway, all right, on where we go.
North Hingham, 10 grand based on prior years. The largest amount was 6,200 3 years ago. I think 10 grand is probably good unless they're going to give us a fee hike, which I know with their new plant, I don't know. So
I'd keep it there. I mean,
I think 10 grand is enough cushion.
Yeah, I mean, if they did the $5,000 and went up 10%, I mean, what are we talking? $500?
Right.
So I mean, why? I think 10 grand is good. So
okay, perfect. The next line would be Xenon. We have a service contract with Xenon. I don't know exactly what they do. I know we had a contract at one point. And Lisa, were you able to find information on that?
No, it was not.
Well, that has to do with the training people for the membranes, and they come out X amount of times per year to inspect them.
Okay, so I'll keep that at 15. Lisa, if you could reach out to that company to or look for the most recent contract or agreement, there's got to be some sort of agreement we have with them, because we only spent $37.50 last year. We haven't spent anything to date this year, and unless it got charged to a different account, we didn't pay anything for that line item in 2019.
So we should have had, I would suspect, some sort of a warranty because of the new membrane installation. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, but this is a situation though where a major corporation used to do this, and then it turned out that Suez ended up buying the company that
Xenon.
They reversed who was running it, and because we had a very strong contract that we had to pay annually, and actually it was like a 3 or 4 year contract. So I think it'd be for Lisa just to go in and pull the file and see what the deal is with contracts and stuff, because it may have been the main contract that provided, let's say, for inspections may have been replaced something for less than only as you need it, and hence the $3,700 1 year and a different amount another year, because it used to be every year it used to be a defined amount that was more than this.
And Lisa, the other thing you might want to do is contact Rob or Scott and see whether we even need it now with the new membranes.
Okay.
And then, so the next line is another, so this is more emergency repairs for the collection system. This has been kind of all over the place as well in the last number of years.
I think we had one this year that used up the whole amount almost. Yeah,
so we haven't been billed yet because nothing's been charged to this account. And and depending on if Woodard and Curran handles that, how they bill us, it may get lumped in to the service contract. So Lisa, that's something that we just have to pay attention to, is if Woodard and Curran is responsible for these other, I know we have a number of things going on with them. So just got to make sure they're getting posted to the right account.
And that's pretty much what you saw on that letter from Rob, as far as what's going on and everything. And because of the...
Now, did Rosano Davis did the repair? I think both Bill and I went to it at the end of right on Jerusalem Road at Atlantic Avenue, and it was a single house connection, but it caused a huge problem because it took out the sewer main. We had to divert the thing. It was overflowing. It took about 3 days or so to repair it, and to me, it would have been a charge like that. But I wonder if it was charged to maybe the pump account or the grinder pump maintenance or something else that let it go through.
Yeah.
And maybe
Lisa, let's take a look at that, only because I'm looking at that same line item as of right now in real time, and we still haven't paid a bill out of there.
yeah, so I'm saying, so it was, but it could have been, something could have been paid out of another account.
And it was Rosano Davis?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. In other words,
Okay.
it just coded wrong.
Yeah, it was probably the grinder pump. It was probably the grinder pump, maybe.
What did you spend for grinder pump maintenance though last year? Quite a bit of money, right?
So grinder pump maintenance, so far we spent 16,000. Last year was about 68 grand we spent in maintenance.
68? Okay.
So we'll take a look at that just to iron that out. But if that line item for emergency repairs, I'd be inclined to keep that 30,000.
Just make it the way it is.
Yeah. And then permit expenses or office supplies, I mean, there's 1,000. We barely spend it, but if you need anything, I'd rather just have the money there year over year.
Yep.
And then the last item there, indirect costs, is what I sent out, just updated for basically pay raises. You see that the amount only went up about $1,300.
That's for that's for the every town employee.
That's for all, yeah. So me, Chris, Brian, I sent the indirect allocation last month sometime, and you can take a look at it. But it's consistent. The allocation methods consistent with the last few years.
I sent it again this afternoon to you guys.
I haven't had a chance to look at it. I got the other spreadsheet that you sent to me as well, so I can look at that later.
Dawn,
Okay.
can we go back to the connection permit expenses? I was my mind was somewhere else, writing notes down. What did you say about that?
I said 0. I didn't put a number in. We spent 880. I don't know what the expenses are.
So what those expenses are is when a property is being connected to sewer and it has to be pressure tested. We contract Highburn.
Oh, right, Highburn.
To do the pressure test. And it's $440 per pressure test. So the 880 prior to that was probably 2 of them. And we have had some.
Well,
but I might have coded it to something else.
So take a look. I mean, we can put in $2,000 if, I mean, that's 4 or 5 pressure tests a year. I don't know how reasonable that is, but it's only 2,000.
Yeah.
I guess that revenue should be coming in on the other side, I think.
There is, yeah.
We have revenue up top. It just doesn't seem like we've again, Lisa would have to look in the detail to see how many times we paid Highburn and if it's really worth adding a budget line for this, for how minimal it does happen. But, you know, for now, I'll put 2,000. And if we want to get rid of it, we can. At least we're covering ourselves. The next section for debt service is what it is. This is based on already issued debt and the repayment terms. The next section, transfer to capital stabilization. So this went up. You'll see the last 2 years, 19 and 20, was at 171,470.
Yep.
We dropped it down to 62 last year to balance the budget, so we didn't use up any retained earnings. And then we committed to getting back on track. So this is essentially, from my understanding and discussion with John, the 171 should be a 10-year deposit to replace membranes every 10 years.
Yep.
So that's why getting that back up to the 171,000 is important. Because again, from my understanding too, is that the last time we increased the user rates was essentially to pay for this transfer, to accumulate enough funding each year so that we can pay for this every 10 years.
So yeah, to that point, we did. I don't know what we had as the basically this betterment that we were looking at. You know, I don't know what we were injecting into our fund when we started for the funding of the membranes on a yearly basis. What we did find out though, because we had the extra money, is that we paid under, like I would say, relatively significantly. We paid what we bought it for was under what we had as a balance in that account.
But it allowed us to do some other things that made it a better, that we didn't plan on, that made it better, which was like the SCADA system.
Right, no doubt, no doubt. But if it's going to, it's if we could put in like 125 grand versus 171 grand, that's going to have a bit of an effect on our deficit at the bottom of the sheet here. That's all I'm thinking. You know,
we don't. We're putting that in, and we'd like to put it in, but if we didn't have the money, we wouldn't have to put it in, or we wouldn't be able to put it in a way, right? Meaning the 171,000 is a good number if we have the money. If for some reason something happens to our revenues or something that goes down, we don't have to put the 171.
All right. So this is not an automatic charge to the fund.
Well, the question is,
So
when is
I
it
don't
paid?
know that. So I was not here. I don't believe I was here when this started. I thought the increase in the rate was specific to fund to come up with this number.
No.
So I could be wrong.
Yes.
That was the way I interpreted it from John.
No, it was.
Well,
Bill.
no, but yeah, but they had it. There was always a budget line item, and I'm presuming this is what it was, that had a, say, I'll make it up because I can't remember, 75,000 to cover the cost of membranes, and that went on. I think I've been on the board 9 years, and that was a year or so before, something like that. So that there was an accumulating amount held in an account, you know, in a rainy day fund type of thing for membrane replacement. And that was, boy, I would suspect when you were on then, I would think, and you and John and
Right.
Brian, maybe.
But what we did was to sell the town meeting on who should pay for membranes when they need to be replaced. Is it the people that are using it today and it's deteriorating a little bit each year, and in 10 years you have to replace it? Or is it the people that take on the expense that weren't responsible for the, you know, for what, to sort of make it so you had to replace it, meaning during that time frame. And so is, how many people want to put the money aside now, save money on interest and everything else, have the money available, pay the bill, and then start accumulating for the next time? So a rainy day fund to do something that you knew you had to do. Now, in fact, the membranes lasted a little longer, and we were able to get a better deal. And you don't know whether the same thing's going to happen. But if we reduce it, then we're going against that idea that we had, which is you can do it. I mean, you know, in other words, if you have to raise the rates again to continue the amount that you were spending before, or that you need a higher amount, then we have to go back to town meeting and say, we want to renew what we did before, and this is where the money's going to go. So I don't know, I sort of like the idea of putting it towards something special and not having temptation to use it for something that you're not saving for. You know, so I guess you should have to have a certain number. But on the other hand, if by chance something happens and we don't have the money, and then we can't put it in for right now, until we raise the rates and get more money, then that's what we have to do, right?
I just have this absolute affliction against seeing a deficit in the first budgets that we submit into the town. That's all. I get prickly heat when I see this.
How much of a deficit are we going to show?
401,000.
We can't show a deficit when we go.
Yeah, no, but that's what I mean. But right now we're showing that, so that's all.
Right now, with the figures we have in here, we're showing a deficit of 231,000.
Oh, okay, so this is what your updated numbers?
Yeah, which really didn't change. So the numbers I gave are, now again, you should be looking at FY22 sewer budget DLPV1 is the document name, which I sent a week or so ago.
Okay.
It didn't change much, because the only thing I changed on this, we took 30 out from one line and we put in another, and then couple grand here and there we added. So 231 is a deficit we're at.
Now, that's,
I guess I got to rely on you that that statement is right. I agree. We can't have a deficit, but man, at the same time, if we committed and we said that we're increasing something so that every 10 years we'll have the funding available to pay for a specific item, it's hard for me. I was okay reducing that transfer to 62 last year, as long as we committed. But I mean, that we would need to take that 100% away to even, and we're still at a $60,000 deficit.
Right, and that's what I just was looking at.
So I don't know what the right answer is. Again, like I said, from my understanding, which sounds a little maybe off, is that I thought this was basically like a permanent transfer we'd be doing year over year until God knows in the future, to continue to pay every 10 years for a membrane. And I thought the 171, because 171,470 is a strangely specific number.
So that would probably have been a number that somebody got back X years ago as to what the cost was X years ago for a membrane similar to the one that we had replaced. That's where I'm seeing that come out of.
And what's interesting, and maybe that's maybe this was done so that by the 10-year mark, these membranes that we just replaced would have money, because we obviously had enough money this year to cover the cost of the membrane.
What if we looked at it a different way? What did we pay on the membranes that we just bought, Lisa? Do you know?
It's about $960.
All right. So if we didn't, so we're looking at that. So that's $960 divided by, say, 10 or 11 or 12, which they're supposed to run. You know, maybe that's what it is. Maybe if it's.
But what we did in 18, we transferred 600,000 into this capital fund to start it.
Yeah.
But I thought it was going to cost about $1 million each, and they ended up costing like $1.2 million for two of them. You know, some.
Oh, that would make sense, because
whatever your number was.
Right.
And then, you know, it's a bid situation that there were people that were probably at $1 million each that bid, and then there was a company that who ended up getting the job that was significantly lower with better technology, different concept, but everything fit in with what it is that in other words, they modified the plant to take a different manufacturer's membranes that met all of our criteria. That was a little bit luck, meaning we didn't have to spend a lot of money to modify, the way the system works. And so, and then the other thing happened was that we literally got them installed for next to nothing by Woodward and Curran's people. And we had the cooperation of the town to load them and unload them, and the freight was paid because of their delay. In other words, everything fit in that we got the best deal that anybody could get. And so I think you could probably be comfortable in fact, lowering that down or something, even though what I said before, because it really is going to generate $1,700,000, right?
Yeah, which we won't need that much.
Right. So so right now in the sewer capital stabilization fund, right now as we speak, we have $178,000 in there, right? Mm-hmm. So we just installed the membranes 6 months ago, a little more. So if we think they'll be needed in 10 years, maybe we come up with for 10 years, what would the inflation or the expected cost increase be? I guess I'm just trying to come up with a justifiable way to say, well, based on the amount we have, what we just paid, what do we need to make sure that we have money in this stabilization fund in 10 years to pay for it, so that we could decrease this 1.7. If it only cost us $1 million, and I'm just throwing $1 million because of the round number, to do this year, what would be a reasonable inflation rate per year for construction cost or for material? Come up with that number, and then we base that transfer on that.
Yeah, that would be, well, again, that's kind of a wild ass guess, because because we had other people present technologies to us, which were like a $500,000 solution. The problem with it was we were going to have to alter our tanks, which would have cost us, another like 750 grand or maybe, and just, it was a totally different technology, but, and it just made more sense to go with the company that had made them previously at a lower price. I don't know how you answer that. I don't also know that what's going to be going on in technology in 10 years that something might come up and completely replace this at a better cost.
Right.
And looking at the budget, I also don't know where we're going to come up with $231,000 to balance it.
So, right. So I guess, right. So bear with me 1 second.
Do we have any retained earnings that we already have that aren't spoken for that we can take or no?
Can you say that again, Wayne? I'm sorry.
Are there any more retained earnings in any account that we can, you have a successful year, so you have more you put in, you have a year that you can't, quite budgeted. Can you take that and transfer some of that as part of the budget? And is there any way to do that?
Right. I mean, I prefer not to, especially with the low amount of retained earnings that we have, and we still have capital to deal with. So I guess thought number one, say we put in 100, and again, this can change, but say we drop the 171 down to 100. Mm-hmm. So that in 10 years, we'd have, as long as the market went fine we'd have 1.2 million. Mm-hmm. We spent less than $1 million. So we're projecting it's going to cost 20% more to do the membranes. Mm-hmm. Just making this up, right? So I think based on that, that's a reasonable estimate. And like you said, as technologies change or our plant changes, maybe it's a little different. So if we drop that down to 100, we're still at $159,000 deficit. But if we're still not settled, that 1.445 is a reasonable sewer use estimate. An increase to that would help offset this. Mm-hmm. Now, is it $200,000 worth? I don't know. Because the other thing that we have to think about, if we need to do rotary sludge thickener, if that is a need that we need to do like soon, meaning the next year, we have to plan for that. And currently, we have $278,000 in retained earnings. But, if you took the whole 200 to pay for that, we'll leave you with 78,000. 3.2% of your budget. That is very low, in my opinion, because you need money just in case. And that's why the retained earnings, I'd like to see it 10%, if not more, somewhere around there. So we're going to have to use some money. Either we're going to have to borrow. If the sludge thickener is something that we can borrow for, I'd have to find out a little bit more about the project. But even reducing 100, we're at 159. We still have to come up with some sort of funding mechanism to pay for that rotary sludge thickener.
So, Don, excuse me, to Wayne's point earlier, I mean, there is probably a very high likelihood that we're going to have, large connection fee coming in that would obviate any of the stuff we're talking about. I'm trying to find the number right now.
Almost pay for the membranes for the next.
I
know, and I live in the now. I live in what I know.
Right. No, I don't either. Hey, now, given the volatility of this project, I don't want to bet on anything right now. So,
right.
What would the 3.6% increase give us for money if we would have a 3.6% increase?
Well, now are you saying based on what we budgeted last year?
So, no, well, I'm just thinking. I took one of my sewer bills and I just put down what is 34.236 cents on top of 951, assuming that 3.6% of the 951. So I'm at. So my thought was, what is so instead of 951, the rate is I'm going to call it 35 cents. So 983, nine
86.
$9.86, right? So under $10. And what would that give us for revenue? And I guess you just do the 3.6 times the $1,519,280 or whatever the number is that you've got for 2022.
So if you add, again, based on what usage are we using to estimate that? So
we were using, so it has to be, well, if our let's see. If our usage charges were $1,519,000, right? And I go ahead and put a 3.6% of that, right? Just to get an idea of what's that. I mean, otherwise you have to use the 12 million gallons or 12 million. Let's see. We're doing the rate on 100 cubic feet. So you've got to do the total number of cubic feet and multiply it times the
yeah, so I mean, I have it laid out in the spreadsheet without knowing what we're comfortable with flow. I don't know off the top of my head.
I'm just assuming that it's the same flow as last year or something.
So one question, Don, to you.
Yep.
Are we bound by limiting ourselves to 3.8, 3.6%, or can we go to 5?
No, I don't even. I was just going to ask where the 3.6% came from.
I don't
even know.
I took it from the FY 20 and 21 worksheet, and it said includes. Well, this amount said includes a 3.6% increase flow base for a worksheet for the worksheet for 2021.
All right. That
I had in front of me. So meaning it wasn't done last year. It wasn't done for this current year, right? So it would be, we didn't have any increases this year.
I'm sorry, I don't know what we're looking at. 3.6 was from John?
I think so. Whoever did that worksheet there.
I think that's John. Yeah, that's
yeah.
John.
Yeah. And this was it was last year's worksheet, really.
Lisa, can you send that to me?
Which one is it again?
This was the FY, it says on top, FY 20 and FY 21 working budget. It says operating revenue, usage charges, and stuff like that.
Okay, so I just sent that. Yeah. I sent that already, but I have assumed 5% decline.
Oh, I got it.
3% increase in rates.
So maybe it didn't happen, but okay. So assumed 5% decline. Did we put in the wrong amount? I don't think that doesn't make sense. That's not the right number. 1.492 is not what we budgeted. I think we adjusted it to make the budget balance. And that's why I don't have the support for how we got the 1519. Sorry for my language.
Well, apparently actual for FY 2020 was 1522.
That's what we, no, we budgeted that. So that's the issue. We budgeted that. What we actually pulled in was only 1423 in 20.
Okay, that was what the end.
Right. That's why it's not always good to look at the budget.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
And that's what I tried telling John.
So it was down by $100,000, which is what you said in the beginning, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, there's always this thing of when we're billed for something that is not I don't know. I don't know, I guess the projection of this type of finance is not the regular finance of a lot of businesses, you know.
No, I know. Well, but for the most part, you know, luckily in our community, we have not had an issue with payment. So the only difference is it's a timing of reading. So when you bill, the first quarter bill in fiscal 21 was basically related to the last 3 months in fiscal 20. So like, yes, there's that difference there. But once the amount is committed, and that's why I guess you're right. You really have to look at the usage and kind of what the history has been and what we're thinking may happen. And, to your point, if we look at the first 2 quarters this year, like look at the calendar year, maybe that's a better way to look at it. If we know that the next year isn't going to really change, we think the usage may be the same because people are still staying at home, we could explain that. I don't think we should make up $200,000 or $300,000 based on that assumption, but it's something that we could increase the budget a little bit, so we can look at those flows and we can try to work something out and circulate that again to see where we're at based on this last calendar year, and maybe use that as our basis flow instead. Again, what I did just for the talking point, I literally looked at the last 3 full fiscal years, so 2019, 18. And I just picked the lowest usage, which was 20. And again, just from my perspective, being conservative and I'd rather start low and then come up with a realistic and an approach that makes sense and is based on something we all agree on.
Yeah, what I was going to suggest, and I'm going to do this because I wanted to go through the flow as well, is to look at, maybe go back 3 years and look at the third and fourth quarters and see how that compares to our flows in the first and second quarter of fiscal year 21. Because that would give us an idea of, because they're so close, that would give me an idea of how much we're over. And because looking at some of these, just giving eyeball for the first 2 quarters, going back all the way to 16, we're over by anywhere from 100,000 to maybe 700,000 gallons. So, and that I have to think that is solely contributed to the whole COVID thing and people staying at home and all of that, homeschooling and what have you. Mm-hmm. I think if we look at it that way, and then attach a number to it based upon that, I think would be in a better, I think we'd have some scientific data to say, if somebody says, well, how did you get to 1,678,012? Well, we went back and we did a sort of empirical study of the last 2 quarters of the past 5 years. And then we benchmarked that against the first 2 quarters of the last 5 years to see where are we in that piece, because basically what we're trying to do is prognosticate what's going to happen in quarters 3 and 4 based on what has happened in the 2 quarters preceding it and the 2 quarters after it. So it's always the first and the second preceding and following. So if we do that, if we do have a percentage of what are we over by, I think that's what our budget is. And we can defend that by saying, okay, I got this sheet here that shows us all the usages all the way back to fiscal year 12. We went back 6 years or 4 or 5 years, and we figured that out. I don't know how anyone's going to throw rocks at you because it's what's been used.
Right. But what would be interesting, Bill, would be to put that up against what the plant is processing also to see, this is only to see whether I or different things.
Well, yeah, well, but we almost have to look at what's being billed versus what's being processed, because I almost wouldn't want to do it because it would probably scare the hell out of us by saying, geez, we're processing way more than we're billing, which is to your point, it's most likely I.
Yeah, and remember, we've got 20 people that weren't being charged for sewer, but using sewer.
Well, that's another point too. Good to bring up. Should we add that into the budget, Don?
We know what it is.
Now, do we know what their flow is? Do we have any data to tell us? Yeah. Now, I guess you could assume, right? You could assume if there's some sort of average out there, an average unit or home. I don't know how you would add it, and I don't know how significant of a change that would be to our budget.
Okay, so
The water
there's
department.
like 6 or 8, but the water, yeah, water, we have water usages.
Yeah, so we could use the water usages that should have gone into the sewer. But
In some instances, we can. There's some that are on private wells or some that are on aquarium water that we be able.
So then we do the standard EDU, charge. How they estimate a plant by the dwelling units.
But there's one other factor I think that might have come into play last year, and that is the water ban that we had. When you had such dry conditions, and then people were being constantly said, you can't water your lawn, you can't do this. I think sometimes there are people that will say, I can't use as much water because we don't, the town doesn't have as much water or something, or things that could affect psychology. I'm going to take a shorter shower because we've got a water ban now or something. I don't know whether that's just my imagination now, but there are different factors that affect the usage.
Yeah.
So I guess where we're at, if you want to go through that exercise of projecting a usage based on.
I want to do it because I wanted to see where we are, for
Yeah.
my own edification. If we use it, great. If not, that's fine.
I like that, and then we can take a look at it in the next meeting, kind of just see if we all agree on it, and then we can try to plug it in the schedule and then see where we're at that point.
All right.
But so for now.
So who's going to do that?
I am.
Okay. And are you using the usage report, the commitment sheet?
I'm using it starts with usage charges on the left and goes to average water use 100 cubic feet on the right. That's what I'm using. Yeah, that's what you're referring to, I believe, Don, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That's what I'm using.
Okay, so let's do, I think that, so right now with some of the modifications we made, we're at a deficit of 160. We'll regroup at the next meeting, see where that number is based on the projected flow, and then kind of see if there's other areas to tweak. I mean, rotary, can I just ask, rotary sludge thickener, what exactly, is it a machine? Is it, I mean, when I think of a thickener, I think of a thickening agent maybe that's being added. What, is it an actual machine that's being updated? What?
Like a picture a long centrifuge that the stuff goes into, and it spins and takes all the water out of it, and then the materials that are left by can be deposited.
Okay, so is that system being replaced for 200?
Yes.
Okay.
That was the budget that was given to us. I don't know if you remember, Wayne, if that included installation or any of that stuff.
I don't know, but what happens is if it doesn't work well and too much water is in with the sludge, then they pump this out and they take it to another treatment facility to basically dry it out and turn it into fertilizer or something, so that the cost is and the frequency of hauling this sludge is greater than if you can get it just the right solution so that it can still be pumped through a 4-inch hose, instead of being like, you took too much out, the pumps won't work. If you took too little in, you're just sending out too much water that's in it. So it's
I see.
If you spend the money, you're going to get the whoever's paying for the sludge removal, which I think we are now.
Yep.
And that cost of doing it is reduced. So it really is something that we would save money by having it working. And right now with it not working. And then there's another thing called the grit screw, which is just a device that takes any bones, anything that went through your grinder, or anything like that makes it to the sewer treatment plant that doesn't dissolve. There's a mechanism there that it takes all that stuff and it literally deposits it right now, like in a 55-gallon drums that then just go to a landfill or get removed in some fashion. So, and the grit screw is just, sort of like a screener that gets clogged, and then it starts losing its squares or something like that, and then it puts out more. It takes more stuff out than should go out.
So the grit screw, my understanding, we already have money aside for that. So
And we're fixing it. We fixed it.
Oh, but if I may, at the last meeting with Scott, he asked if we could use those funds for something else, for the blowers.
Okay, so we either fixed it or whatever they ever did with it.
So we're not doing the grit screw now, that got pushed off.
Yeah, and the blowers, yeah, Don, I remember that. The blowers, we have a sort of public relations situation with that because there's more air going into the new membranes, and so the neighbors are mad at the amount of noise that's coming out of the plant.
So how much was that? I didn't think that was much money from when I figured. I don't know where my notes are from that meeting. I remember.
Some people think it's causing the electricity. We're using more electricity, which they're looking at, meaning the bills lately have been going up because they say the blowers are working harder and they have to have them on all the time.
Well,
and like
but the funny on this thing, the list that Rob Scott sent, blower silencers, he says that the parts are already received and paid for under year 2.
That's the blower silencers, though. What he was talking about, Scott was talking about, was having the blowers themselves evaluated and maintained by a repair technician. But I understand.
Well, he also was wondering, we were also if I remember it correctly now, looking for an HVAC engineer that would come in and give us an idea of how to fix it.
I don't even. Okay.
We're into the workings of the plant too, rather than.
No, but this is what we need to know, and it's kind of they come to us and that we need to do this and this, and we commit, we have the funding, and then all of a sudden, it's not that important. Apparently, we could push that off. It's to me a little frustrating to continue, and I can only imagine how frustrated you guys can get too. but we're looking at funding, we're committing, and then all of a sudden they change it up on us that it's not that important anymore. I feel like when we're committing money is at a level of importance that needs to be done.
Well, it's not that way. It's the level of importance is based on what our engineers are telling us is critical or not. And in the case of the blower silencers, that was a number one, sort of critical item versus the grit screw. So
because the grit screw can be done manually, and that's what they've been doing, because it's not working at all. So they've been doing it manually. So Scott felt that more importance right now, as we're coming up into the spring season where the blowers will be running consistently again, and to appease the neighbors, we need to get those fixed.
And does he have a price tag?
It's not a lot of money, I don't think.
Well,
I thought he did. Let me check my meeting minutes. I thought he may have.
Gentlemen, I have to leave in about 3 minutes.
Okay.
For another call, another appointment I'm going to. And then I can.
So I guess to wrap up, I think we're good. Bill, if you want to do that calculation, and then we can talk at the next meeting. I guess the only other thing, you had mentioned that you'll have Rob and them come in to tell us what we really need to do for next year for projects. I think it would be good to get an all-in cost for the rotary sludge thickener. Okay. So what is the cost of the equipment install, soup to nuts, so that if we had to go and borrow some money to pay for this over a few years, we have the all-in cost ready for town meeting.
Yeah. Do you also, I think, because having dyslexia gives me the advantage of sometimes asking a question to make things a little bit easier. Do you have a good sense of what the allocation for sewer will be for capital?
Allocation for sewer.
How much money do you think we will have for capital, irregardless of the requests?
Oh, not enough. Not. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So that's my issue is that we need to. So right now we have 278,000 of retained earnings, which, based on our current budget, we're at about 11.5%. I guess getting down to 5 to 7 is I'd live with. So we could take $100,000 if we had to out of here, and you'd be at 7.4%. I think that's reasonable. But that $100,000 is only half of what you need for that for that sludge thickener.
Right, but I'd like to also, when you're doing the sludge thickener, is to get an estimate from Woodward and Curran as to what that's going to save us too. Just because if we have, then if we could find out that, okay, let's finance that $200,000, and in fact we're going to get it back in 2 years or 3 years because we're going to pay less of this. I mean,
Right.
that's the real reason they're doing it, is to reduce the amount that has to be trucked out. I think they're doing like 1 truckload a week, and it used to be 1 truckload a month. You know, so that cost of getting rid of it, and I don't think you have to probably pay the same amount for that loose load that you're putting in there as you do as the correct density load. Mm-hmm. So it's really financially important for us to see what those numbers are.
Sure, but I agree. And to your point, Bill, that's why I think it's important for them to really tell us out of, all these numbers that were on that sheet. We have funding for almost all of that already. We have existing funding for SCADA, all the stuff they're going through. The sludge thickener, we know we don't. And what other big items do they really think we need for this next coming year? Mm-hmm. And if they could do it for a couple of years, great. But we do need to know what they think is real priority that will give us benefit, or we need for the plant or for our pump stations, fiscal 22, so that we can come up with a game plan. Is it 200,000 that we need to borrow? Is it 350? Because we have this other project that kind of goes together with the sludge or somewhere else that we can borrow for a couple of years and maybe pay for it out of a new rate next year. Or so just a couple of things that we have to continue to think about as we go through.
And the interest won't be any lower.
No.
I know.
I have to leave. I'm sorry.
Okay, before you go, so it was approved that, it was motioned and approved that $20,000 to repair and fix the blowers was approved by you guys at the meeting on January 12th.
Right.
We're going to use the $35,000 from the grit score to cover that. So it was $20,000, Dawn.
Okay. Minus 20.
I didn't think it would cost that much, but I think they just put I think you guys had put in a little buffer.
Yeah.
So with that being said, I still, depending on how much the grit screw costs, we could probably still do most of it. Again, we need to update it, but we have money in one of our line items, capital expenditures in the budget, our repairs and maintenance. If the barn doors are still 40 grand, between those two accounts, we have 38 grand to spend. On capital. So, and one of those numbers is in our current operating budget. So we need to spend it between now and June 30th if we're going to be able to use that money. So something to think about for the next meeting.
Yeah, an item that we've been trying to do for 4 years is to replace the 2 doors. And we actually had a purchase order for like $34,000. And then the contractor said, I can't do it.
Right, so, and that money is still set aside. We have, that's an account on my spreadsheet is documented of do not touch, this is for the barn doors only. So that when I say we have 38 grand, that's factoring in that we're using.
Outside of that. Okay,
yep.
Terrific.
Exactly.
Okay. All right.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Don.
Thank you.
So do you want me to invite Rob and Scott to the next meeting, which is February 9th?
Yeah, sure. Just for a few minutes. Yeah. And I don't think we're going to be talking about anything that Rod needs to dive in on with us. If we are, then he can come in. But, maybe put him on standby, and then rather than, to Wayne's point, having him sit there all day.
And Dawn, back to the connection permit expenses.
Yeah.
Pyburn, I coded that to 60-440-5580, which is the sewer connection permit expense.
Yeah.
That's what I billed it to.
Yeah, I see that. I see that. We've never had a budget in there. So it doesn't matter, not a big number.
Okay.
All right.
Well, thank you guys.
Time.
All right. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.